Colonial Williamsburg is the reproduction of the 18th century capital of the colony of Virginia. This is the original site of the capital of the colony of Virginia. This is where so much of the basis of the Revolution, the American Revolution, took place.
Colonial Williamsburg is a heritage site like no other, authentically reenacting life from the late 18th century. It was a time of great historical significance to the USA, but it was also a time when horsepower was a key element of everyday life.
Well, of course, horses were just a fact of life in the 18th century. So to show an 18th century town, village, plantation without horses is not giving you the impression of what it was about. So horses are integral to the scenery. If you're out here during the day, you're seeing carriages moving around, people on horseback, livestock in the pastures, as would have been in the 18th century. The carriages are all reproductions. There are original vehicles out there from this time period, 1770s, 1780s, but for the use we give them, which is giving visitors rides and also using them for different events, we have to have reproductions. But they are faithful reproductions of originals. Making the harness, we have harness makers that we can use here, and also on the outside we have wheelwrights, which is very important because the wheelwrights not only work on the carriages, but they also do build some of the smaller vehicles, the riding chairs, which are two-wheel vehicles, and the carts and wagons. Here what is interesting is they're still using all the same tools that they were using in the 18th century, so it's very much hand tools. Farriers now, farrier in the 18th century was also your vet. So that the term farrier in the 18th century not only shod your horse, but also was the person you turned to if your horses had any kind of disease or illness. Of course, pointing out that normally the cure was far worse than the disease. The difference is we're putting out horses now to show an 18th century town, but in the 20th century manner. So those horses have to be kept in the best 21st century possible ways that we can. We have about 26 horses that we use 7 days a week and rotate them. It's the type of horse we use is normally a crossbred. Temperament is everything. They've got to be able to put up with fife and drum corps, cannons firing, muskets, and lots of people around them. So they've got to have a very, very good, quiet temperament. What you have to remember is so many people have nothing to do with horses nowadays. Horses are very strange to most people. They see them in the movies, they may see them in their towns, policemen riding them and everything, but most people do not get close to horses. So we find enormous reaction from children particularly, who are actually able to get up close. Carriage rides are very popular, but I think for most people just the sense of having horses around them is very special.
The visitor's experience involves historical reenactments, which can draw large and sometimes quite noisy crowds, posing questions for the Williamsburg horses.
When we're out here in character, we're amongst the 21st century guest who comes to visit us. And we try to bring them into our time, into that moment, into our history, to make them part of it. And as far as he's concerned, other than eating my epaulets here, he's usually pretty good. He likes the attention. Children, for example, such as these and other guests. He's very approachable, he likes the attention and allows me indeed to interpret my character and answer the questions that I'm asked for where I am, who I am in that moment in time.
We train them or school them or prepare them, we try to, for all situations that we're going to encounter. For example, here in Colonial Williamsburg, we know and we hope we're going to get large crowds. So for them to deal with crowds. Quite often this particular horse, his name is Nelson, is going to be used as a soldier's mount. George Washington uses him, I as Benedict Arnold use him, Lafayette uses him. So as a result, we need to prepare him to deal with flags, with muskets, with the fifes and drums, with soldiers marching down the street, with people cheering or people booing, depending upon the scene or the situation. So all of that preparation is done, of course, beforehand. And just like people, some are better suited for it than others.
They love to see the horses. They want to ask questions about the horses. They want to, how old do they live? How long do they live? They want to know about horseshoes. Sometimes I'll pick the horse's foot up and show them exactly how the horseshoe is put on. Of course, you get a cringe on that when you tell them it's nailed on, but then you go on and explain to them that it's done through a nail, and if done properly, the horse never does feel it, and it's really better for the horse to have shoes on this type of surface than it would be to not have them.
For the millions of visitors who pass through Williamsburg every year, it is easy to see the horse culture that is so important in American history. For Richard Nicol, it is vital that the experience imparts that knowledge to the wider public to ensure a future for the horse in a modern society.
In this time period we're talking about, the revolutionary time period, horses were just integral to life. This is how you moved, this is how you got around. They were just there. They were part of their life. It was, you couldn't think of life then without horses, I don't believe. So it was so much of a part of our life, and that's now what we're losing. By the turn of the 20th century, horses, as the mechanical era came in, horses were slowly moving away from being an integral part of life. And then they started to become more for something you do just for pleasure. But we have to remember there were centuries when horses were used for the purpose of living, for work. The horse world often already preaches to the converted. We need to make sure, if we're going to assure the general public that horses are well looked after, how horses are looked after, and everything else, that the general public needs to be able to get up close, see animals, talk about horses, be able to talk to people who care for horses just to understand how they're taken care of. We have what we call bits and bridles tours, where volunteers take visitors through our stables. And the fascination of people just knowing how horses are looked after. For most people it's a real revelation, and we find that is a very important program. And also anything on the streets, just the drivers talking to people about how horses are cared for and everything. We forget that, again, most people don't have close connections, and where can you go and get a close connection to a horse? So it's very important.